Howdy again, and today I have one of the earliest Sony E-mount lenses in my hands, a small macro lens with a wider angle than usual, the Sony E30mm f3.5 macro. It's only for Sony's mirrorless E-mount cameras and gives you an APS-C image circle. Here's what you see if you try and use it on a full frame camera and not in crop mode. It costs around $300 in the US or £200 in the UK, so it's a nice low budget option. Why is this little lens still relevant today? Well, for a start, it's a macro lens with a 1:1 magnification ability, bringing you super close to your subject, which is always fun. Most macro photographers prefer a lens in the 60 or 100mm region because, unlike this lens, those will give you a bit of working room from your close-up subject and a much more compressed background in your images, picking out your subject a bit more. But a wider angle macro lens like this one can be a lot smaller, a lot cheaper, and can be a bit more useful for everyday photography too, with its wider angle pictures. And also, the Lens Hire company had one that I could borrow for only £6.50. Bargain! Let's go. As you can see, this copy of the lens has seen quite a bit of use in its time, but it worked perfectly well in my tests. And the design of the lens really is as simple can be. Its sole control point is a focus ring, which turns reasonably smoothly, and it's fairly responsive to being turned. The lens is mostly made of metal, and feels as tough as its looks are ugly. It's all based on a metal lens mount, but without weather sealing, and it only weighs 138 grams, so you'll barely feel it on your camera. The autofocus motor works silently and quickly, but with just a little hunting to it, as you can see. The lens does not have image stabilization built in, which is a bit of a shame, but what can you expect at this price point, I suppose? It comes with one of these odd plastic hoods, which will admittedly give you a little protection from flaring, and which also allows you to use a lens cap on it directly. The lens's filter size is a small 49mm. And, well, that's it really. Simple is beautiful, or indeed mildly ugly in this case, but it doesn't look so bad on a white coloured camera, I think. Well, what's much more important than how the lens looks on the outside is its image quality. I'll be testing it here on a Sony a5100 with its 24MP APS-C sensor. At f3.5, sharpness and contrast are very good, but not quite perfect. The corners are a little soft. Stop down to f5.6 and they sharpen up just a little, and image quality back in the middle becomes razor sharp. Stop down to f8 and the middle looks the same, and well, so do the corners. In fact, this is as sharp as the lens gets now, pretty much. If you stop down as far as f16, then a little softness will begin to creep in due to the effect of diffraction. Overall, well, considering that 24MP APS-C cameras had barely arrived on the market when this thing came out, its performance isn't too bad. That corner image quality is just good when you stop down a little, but the lens is always impressively sharp in the middle of the picture. Okay, well, this is a macro lens, so let's take a look at close-up image quality now. When shooting at macro distances, this lens is quite sharp at f3.5, but we see a lot of crazy colour fringing in there. Stop down to f5.6 and contrast improves, and the colour fringing is tamed down. f8 looks excellent, f11 looks about the same, but stop down as far as f16 and we see some softness from the effects of diffraction, and f22 is very soft. So it's not a great performance at wider apertures there. You'll want to shoot between f5.6 and f11 for best results. Okay, let's take a look at distortion and vignetting now. The good news is that the lens projects only the tiniest bit of barrel distortion. The bad news is that at f3.5 there's a huge amount of vignetting, with the corners looking really dark. But the other good news is that if you stop down to f5.6, they brighten up almost completely. Let's see how this lens performs against bright lights. We see some quite broad but soft flaring here, and some glaring and a loss of contrast, nothing completely disastrous though. This lens's maximum aperture of f3.5 is not much brighter than that of a kit lens at 30mm, but there's still a little potential for out of focus backgrounds here, so let's take a look at its bokeh. It's okay, reasonably soft, but looking perhaps a bit heavy in places. Related to bokeh is longitudinal chromatic aberration, the scourge of many a macro lens. At f3.5 we see a little blue and orange on the bokeh highlights, but if you stop down to f5.6 then it begins to reduce down. So then, overall, the Sony 30mm f3.5 macro may have specifications that look rather boring on paper. Out in the field it's quite fun to use though, being so small and light. There's nothing really special about its image quality, but nothing seriously wrong with it either, and it's capable of getting sharp pictures at all distances even 9 years after it came out. If the wide-angle macro lens thing is for you, then considering its very low price, this old lens still manages to come recommended.